I just want to do, you know, the very best job I can. And it really goes beyond the time I'm spending. It's just something that I personally feel like I just can't do a quick and dirty type of job, you know, because I take a lot of pride in carving, and I don't pick up grinders and die grinders and all that kind of stuff, which in some areas may make things go quicker, but I don't think it comes out looking as nice. So the way I'm carving this statue is basically the same way that carvers used 100 years ago or more, and I'm very proud of that it's done in a traditional way. And with all sorts of stone carving, I feel like that's the key to making something really a work of art, you know, or it makes it more beautiful to do things in the old way with chisels and by hand, and it's very enjoyable. My name is Kino and I'm originally from New Mexico, born in New Mexico, and grew up working with my father, and he did all types of masonry and stone masonry. So I learned how to use chisels from an early age. But the carving and sculpting, or architectural carving, probably started about 15 years ago. And it just sort of started slowly and built on itself. I remember when I was, I don't know, maybe 10 years old, my father did a job with a bunch of window sills, and the stone was Indiana buff, and I remember playing around with some of it. So I knew of it from an early age, but we never really used a lot of it till about 10 years ago. What really is just so attractive about it is that it works, you know, in any direction, and it carves very well, and it's not bad for your lungs, you know, it doesn't have silica in it, and that's part of what brought us to come here. We just got sort of tired of wearing masks and dealing with the problems with working around silica a lot. So we got more into wanting to work with limestones, and we worked with some Texas and some Kansas limestone, but mostly we would order blocks from Indiana here, and we would come out here sometimes to pick stone, so that's where we kind of got the interest in moving here. And I love it here. I love being near the quarries and the history of it. I feel very proud to be part of that history. You know, I heard about this project, and I got in touch with Tim Bell. We talked about price and various things and what the project was.
The original statue was more of an indoor plaster statue, and it had been placed outside in the north St. Joseph Grotto back in the mid-1950s. So it was for about 60 years. It had been outside, facing north, the elements. 2015-16, that we had gotten word that Memorial Hospital was going to purchase this property. At that time, we knew that they were going to remove the St. Joseph Grotto. We've got a not-for-profit status as October of 2016. Since then, we've been working to try to save as much as we can of the St. Joseph Grotto. The archway that housed St. Joseph, we had that moved and saved. That thing, it weighed 7,000 pounds. We had a company come in and move it for us. The entire backside of St. Joseph was primarily gone. There were a lot of missing fingers, feet, etc. from that plaster statue. So we decided to move forward with more of a permanent piece of material, which led us to the limestone.
The first thing that I looked at was just to measure it and come up with a general size of the block. And then I actually went up to Reed Quarries in Bloomington and picked a block for it. I tried to pick as select as I could. You know, when they talk about select, or when they grade stone select in quarries, it means it's clear, it has no glass seams, no dry seams, and is very fine grained. So I needed something that was fine grained, which is better for carving and holds the detail better. From where level is on the base of the statue, Joseph has a somewhat of a lean forward, and you know, it's part of a natural pose or position that you'd stand. But if I was to cut a block perfectly square off of the base and go up, I would have needed probably 4 inches more material. So I cut almost a parallelogram. So the top and bottom were parallel and the sides were parallel, but it was tilted forward enough so that I had less to remove on the back. And that worked very well. The pointing machine hangs off of a point on the head, and then it basically rests in these 2 lower benchmarks. The reason I set it up this way was so that I could use the pointing machine on the front and the back. And there's slightly different settings, but I set up the pointing machine that way. And it makes the back more accurate, even though you don't really see it when it's in the grotto. I felt like it would make it go smoother, and there wouldn't be any question to finding any of the points on the back. Using this system of pointing, I have to have probably 90% of what I'm after to be able to copy it, and the rest I can basically use my artistic license, so to speak, to make it work. When Tim brought this plaster statue up, it was in pretty good shape, considering there was some stuff that was broken off. So after he brought it to me, I slowly worked on resculpting those elements. I built up the missing areas with modeling clay, or it's kind of an oil clay that doesn't dry. So I built them up and re-sculpted the toes and filled in parts that had melted on the base, and then re-sculpted this hand and the toes of the Jesus' feet. And there were some parts of the hand still intact. There was a couple of fingers, but all of this was gone, and parts of the stem of the lily were gone. I did go to the Catholic Church in Bedford to look at a very similar statue. I took some pictures of it. It sort of helped me recreate the hand and the feet. I got some ideas on how to recreate the toes and the bottom of the lily and the hand. I even started roughing out the limestone before I finished sculpting those parts that were missing. But the heart of the pointing machine, so to speak, is having these movable joints. The movable joints allows you to move it and lock it so that you can bring this pointer into the model. You want to position these movable joints and arms in a way that you can come in fairly perpendicular to the surface that you are finding. But you also have to leave room so that you can get in there and carve. I'll look for high points first, sort of find the highest point at the center of the knuckle. There's this collar stop on the pointer back here. So I lock that, and that basically makes the pointer so that I can't push it in anymore. It stops at the surface of the model. I'll make a pencil mark on the model and just make sure it's fairly close. So I pull it back and then move the pointing machine to the stone and just move it in, and you can see here that tells me how much further I have to take the stone down. Some areas may need a 1/4 inch taken off, some areas may need a 1/2 inch. It's not so much sculpting at this point, but just locating that point. And usually I'll just make a little divot or dimple with a gouge. So I'll usually come within 32nd to a 16th of an inch, and then I mark it with a center drill and just move it in and out until I get it to seat on that collar stop. So that's pretty close. A lot of times it's good to err on the high side because once you take it off, you can't put it back. Every one of these relates to the model, and sometimes I'll even go back if I've blown off the dust or too much of that pencil. I'll go back and kind of remark those just so I can see them. You know, from the outside, pointing probably looks incredibly boring to people, and they can't imagine how I could spend, 3 months doing those motions back and forth, finding points, and carving and making them meet. Every day is different, every little part of it is different, and I never get bored or tired of it. I mean, it's very enjoyable in the moment to be immersed in it and to really not have that awareness of time. Time does go faster. 2 hours can go by and feel like a half an hour. 2 months goes by and you think it hadn't. Undercutting and piercing through really is what takes a lot of the time. So getting through between their heads and under Joseph's chin, over Jesus's shoulder, up through here, around the cross. A lot of this stuff took a lot of time because it's delicate and it's pierced through. Yeah. So I use a combination of carving as deep as I can and then using drills to delicately drill through. And sometimes I'll use air drill, but I also use this, it's called a violino. It's another tool that was probably invented around the time of the pointing machine. You can have one person just holding a string wrapped around the same way and pulling it back and forth, and the other person holding the drill. But then the bow was invented just so it can be one person. Right. So this comes in handy for piercing through, and I'll use it a lot behind the lilies because it relieves a point where then I can carve to it and I'm not putting pressure out on the carving. And I used it a lot around under the arm and the cross and between the heads. And so in this situation, there's a lot to remove here. You can see that distance. I'll probably just remove some with the air hammer first. That's pretty good. It's been a lot of fun. I've definitely gotten to know them, because of the time involved and every square inch. To me, it's the time I spent doing it and what I learned from it, and the satisfaction of doing such a special project that it really doesn't matter to me if people walk by and know I did it, because I have gotten the satisfaction of working on it, you know, and learning a lot from it. I just want to do, you know, the very best job I can, and it really goes beyond the time I'm spending. It's just something that I take a lot of pride in carving.
To see some of the pictures that we have when they were uncrating it and taking the kind of the straw type of material out, and first seeing it was just overwhelming. But the detail is just, it's outstanding compared to the plaster statue that we had before. You know, it wasn't a machine that was carving this like we have in today's world. It was something that I'm not sure a machine could replicate some of the detailed work that he did in this. We're just thankful. We're thankful that the Mother of God Grotto and St. Joseph, Infant Jesus, the Holy Family is back together. One of our goals is to get the Holy Family back together.